everybody. Welcome to the Finding Financial Fitness Show. I'm your host, Nino Gonzalez, joined again today by Pei Chen. Hey, how's it going?
Good morning. How are you? And it's already heated up here in Texas, in my part of the town.
Oh,
So
you're not
I'm
alone.
doing as
It's
well as I can.
yeah, it's hot. I want a pool. Every summer I'm like I want a pool because yeah, these Houston summers are no joke. And last year was 2023 was really hot, and this year it seems to it's hopefully we're having more rain. Supposedly there's going to be more hurricanes, which will bring more rain as opposed to the heat. But still, it's hot. But it just seems like this every year is something different when it comes to whether it's you have one summer where it's just hurricane summer, then it's just a bunch of heat, no storms. Then now it's a blend of both. So, but I guess that's what happens as we get older, as the years go by, which coincidentally is what we're aiming to talk about today. Some of the questions that we've gotten from different perspectives, right? Given I think something we've mentioned in this show already is our age gap and our age difference, which we think that's one of our strengths because we can target such a wide ranging audience. Being that I'm in my late 20s, you're pushing almost 50. That it's so nice to just be able to relate to people. And sometimes the questions that you've gotten or that I've gotten have been, okay, well, am I too young to start? Whether it's investing or making money, or on the other side of that, is it too late? I'm almost close to retirement. I don't want to blow up my whole investment system because I've built up this 401k or this nest egg. And now you're telling me about all these alternative investments. So we'll discuss kind of age related differences in terms of getting started and when you can start and some things to maybe look for as well as the health side of it, because very as we've discussed multiple times, with the wealth side, there's also a similar track in the health side, which is okay, what point is too early to start training, to start working out, to start taking care of my body? And how does that change over the years? Because somebody in their young 20s is going to have a much different outlook on what it means to be healthy than someone in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And so we'll discuss some of those topics today. So tell me, Pay, is it in your mind is there is it ever too early or too late to start, or do you think for every person now's the right time?
I struggle with that. And part of the reason we wanted to talk about this was because actually I posed a question to you this morning about my daughter. She's like in her teens, right? And we've been teaching her about money for ever since she was really young, right? Whether or not it sinks into her brain, I don't know. But I'm hoping, right, just kind of through, being near us, hearing us talk about it, that something will stick, right? So even financially, I don't know what's the right age. You have all these Rich Dad Poor Dad. There's even board game. I actually bought the Rich Dad Poor Dad. There's an adult game, and then there's a kids version of it, which is kind of like a Monopoly, but more realistic, right? Monopoly is fun, but it's kind of like not real life. But he does have a game for kids. And we used to play a little bit about that, and it teaches good concept. But I'm like, at what age is it good to start thinking about? I mean, I guess financial literacy is never too early to start, obviously, but once you have the fundamentals, right? Now you know how to balance your checkbook and you're in a cash flow positive situation in your life. Okay, then is it too early to start when you're in your high school? Is it That's always been a struggle of mine. Like, when is it a good time to start, with actually investing? I would say as soon as you're, starting to make some money, like whether it's like mowing the yard or walking dogs or babysitting, right? Once you have some money coming in, it's time to start thinking about it, right? Age is obviously limited. Like you have to be 18 or something to set up like a, trading account, but you can always start with paper trading and, you know, testing your knowledge and research skills there. The other spectrum, is there ever a I'm too old to invest? I mean, that's a tough one.
Yeah. I don't think on the other end that there is an age where it's too old because I think at that point, and we're talking the general public here, right? There's going to be oddballs on every corner, right? There is a pretty significant population that are older that are in their retirement age who don't want to stop working because they genuinely love what they do. That's a good thing. We want to encourage that, but that's not the majority. I think for the majority of people who are getting on that tail end of going to look into retirement, maybe they're a few years away, and you're thinking, well, is it too late for them to start investing? Because now at that point, they're not in growth mindset. They're in maybe cruise control mindset or spending mindset, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I think that it all depends on the factors that have gotten them to where they are. But ultimately, it depends on what the goal is. I think if I had to answer the question just flat out, I would say no. There's never a point where it's too old, where you're too old to invest. Because even something as crazy as an annuity, right? Which for us, we might think that this is insane. Why would someone do an annuity? But I think there's a place for it. And I would say an annuity is a form of an investment. I know we talked about the infinite banking concept, and one of Nelson Nash's principles, he talks about life insurance is not an investment. But ultimately, if you view the way you define an investment, if you're saying it's where you put money and you get money as a return, if that's your general definition of investment, then technically it is. Might not be a high return, and the whole purpose of it might not be as an investment. But if you're trying to park money there and your goal is just liquidity and getting cash monthly to live your lifestyle, well, an annuity or even life insurance could work for that with the guaranteed growth of a life insurance policy of 3 to 4% a year. You could live
That's
off of that.
interesting. Would you then consider like a certificate of deposit, right? The high yield. Would you consider that as a investment?
I consider an investment anything that makes my money make money. It's as simple as that. Now, rate of return, cash on cash return, all of the metrics beyond that, that's a breakdown of it. But I think as long as your money is making money, then I think that it's an investment, and
Does it have to make more than inflation?
that's a great question. That's a again, going on the technical basis of what an investment is, the answer would be no. That's the next question of, okay, do I want to invest? Yes. Okay. Now what? Well, what do I want my baseline metric to be? Right? Okay, I know we talked about in our travel hacking kind of review of where I mentioned using your points. Well, one of the things that I like to establish there is what's my minimum redemption value? Meaning, okay, if I find a deal at 1.2 cents per point. Anything above that to me is a good deal. And once you start dictating, okay, I want to invest, and you start saying, okay, well, I want to make sure that I'm beating inflation, right? That this conversation about inflation would have been a lot different 4 years ago, right? We're talking about the CPI, for the country was 2%. The growth of what inflation was supposed to be was 2%. And we were pretty much following that. So it wasn't that difficult to find an investment paying greater than 2% to match inflation every year. But now we're in a place where, especially since the pandemic, the actual realized inflation, not year on year, because year on year you might look and the news says it's only 4%, right? But then the year before that, it inflated by 9%. So now we're adding the 4% in addition to the 9% of what it was. So our money now is worth significantly less than what it was 2 years ago. So I think that's the next step of, okay, what do I want my minimum to be? But I think ultimately, still, if your money is making money, it's still an investment regardless of the return.
And we also have to factor in the time, right? The time value of money is a big one, right? Because on the spectrum of our lifetime, our lifeline, or whatever, if you get in the investing world, you can kind of post along with a lesser return and be okay because you got time on your side. We talked about that penny doubled every day example, right? Um, in that example, obviously, it's super extreme and they truncated, but let's just say it's a penny doubled, every month, right? In that example, it's going to take a little bit longer to reach, that amount. But if you are at the more tail end of your life and you wanted to achieve, if your vision, right, like is that I want to achieve something great, something big, you just naturally have to take a little bit more. It's kind of a double-edged sword. You have to
Right.
take a little
Sounds
bit
like
more
it.
higher risk, and then you don't have the time on your side, right? So it's really difficult to make a decision at that time of what is the best investment for you because you don't have the luxury of time on your side anymore. Can't you can't really afford to lose your entire principal, right? And then still have time to recover, right? We talked about a little bit of the alternative investments that, we got involved in, right? And Some stuff worked out, some stuff didn't work out. And, luckily we have strategies to recover on those, losses. But I'm just thinking for like an average individual, who doesn't have that luxury of, having either the strategy or the time on their side. What are some of the things that, you know, someone can do to still be able to invest in a safe manner, safe quote unquote manner, and still achieve their vision of whatever they are looking to do? Like, is it a matter of adjusting their vision? What do you think?
That's a good question. I think the first thing that comes to mind, and I think it's fresh on after our recording with Chris Bay, the guest that we had on, I think a lot of it has to do with coaching. I think if you can, because we're talking in such general terms. I go back to nutrition because of the fact that everything's so blanket. We can't just say, okay, at age 45, you're going to invest something paying 12% returns, at 50, 10%, and so on. There are no metrics that way. You have to look at what the alternative is, right? And if you're coming out, if you're getting close to retire, and but you have this large 401k that you can comfortably live off, well, then you don't necessarily need to go as aggressive in alternative investments, right? So I think what you brought up is a good point, but I think it helps to really have coaching factored in. But regardless, for anybody, I think the baseline of wherever you're going to start your investments at whatever age, you have to build a foundation. And something that we are so big on is the infinite banking concept as that foundation, because most people, I would venture out to say most people who have a family or even just relatives would want to leave behind or are thinking about, okay, well, when I pass away, assuming I still have money left away when I pass away, I'm going to leave that to my children, to my grandchildren, to my brother, to my sister, whoever. So life insurance has a death benefit kind of baked into that, right? But also it has the guaranteed growth of it no matter what. And then from there, once you can flow that money in, then you can say, okay, from there, I already have that bucket. I've already built this cash value reservoir. Now I can start then using that cash value to start investing in something alternative depending on what my risk strategy is. But no matter what, and this is the strategy we've used, that no matter what, if the investment on top of that doesn't work out, doesn't play out, doesn't pay out at all, well, at least at the end of the day, we have this IBC bank already in place that's going to grow no matter what because we're not drawing out of it. As opposed to if we had $20,000, that's all we had to our savings, and we just threw it in an investment and kind of hoped for the best, and that investment doesn't work out, well, then we've just lost our principal and the time, like you mentioned, the time effect of money to recoup that $20,000, especially for someone later in age, going closer to retirement, will be a lot more difficult. So I think the trajectory typically is the younger you are, the more aggressive you can be because you have time on your side to recover on those losses. So if you're listening to this and you're in your late teens, your early 20s, your 20s, your 30s, you can become a little bit more aggressive once you've identified your goal, but you can become a little bit more aggressive. And that aggressiveness factor comes down as we get older, and our conservative factor goes up because we're in that preservation mindset. And at some point, you want to spend your money, right? The whole point of investing is to make money, to enjoy your money. So, all that being said, I think it's really good to have a coach to help guide you where you are because your everyone's situation is going to be different. No matter if you have the same amount of savings that the person next to you does, your goals are going to be different.
And the important part, yesterday we did talk about the principle of IBC, which is think long term, right? So on this investment journey, I liken IBC to like the foundation, the land and the foundation of your, let's use real estate, right? Everybody kind of gets real estate, and land is tangible. You something you could touch, feel, and it's there. So IBC is like that land, the piece of land that you purchase, and that foundation that you pour, right? And then the investment is like the actual house that sits on the foundation, right? If the whole house burns to the ground, your IBC is still there because that foundation is right. It's concrete, it's solid, it's not going anywhere, and that piece of land is still yours, right? You can still, even if you decide, I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna rebuild this house. You still have value that you can sell this piece of land or something, right? So that's why it's so like no matter how like young or old, like you wouldn't build a house and just not build a foundation, right? You always wanted to start with the foundation. So that piece is so important, because even if you're a little bit older, like, you know, in your we get this question a lot, like, is am I too old to start IBC? You know what I mean? As long as you can qualify for it, go for it because that cash is still available for you to like use. We call that an asset, right? It's something that you can, you know, build a foundation and use the cash value to invest with. So yeah, there are some, strategies that we deploy to allow us to kind of cross the barrier, I would say, right, with the limitations of these traditional ways of structuring investment, right? So if I'm a little bit older and I want to be a little bit more aggressive, I'm going to make sure my foundation is solid so that I could take a little bit more of the higher risk stuff that I normally would not consider, right?
I think there's two elements to this. There is when it comes to IBC, because I think no matter what age, building the foundation is fundamental. However, thinking about someone who's, let's say, 16, 17, mowing lawns just to make some extra money, their positive cash flow is a couple $100 because their expenses are so minimal. They're living with parents. On the flip side to that, you have somebody in their 50s, maybe 60s, who has a larger amount of money saved up, be it in a 401k or just wherever they have that money, but they can't be as aggressive. They need to be conservative. So to kind of see both sides of it. If you're listening to this and you're younger and you're starting out and your cash flow is minimal, it's going to be very difficult to go open up a policy. Now you can, there's not saying you can't do that. You can open up a smaller policy, but at first you might want to reinvest your cash flow into making more money. And what do I mean by this? So if you're younger and your positive cash flow is $100 or $200, it's going to be very difficult to take that money and go invest it into anything really that's going to pay, let's say, 10% a year, because most minimum buy-ins are going to be low. The other option is, of course, options trading or stock trading, but even then, that there's a learning curve to there and you could lose your money. So I think take that 100, $200 and then go learn a skill. Use that money to reinvest back in yourself. Go buy a book, go buy a course, go find a mentor, go learn about how you can make more money. Then you take that course, then you make more money, then your cash flow becomes $300 a month, and you keep reinvesting back into yourself. Or if you have a business, right? If you're going to build a lawn mowing business, reinvest your profits back into the business. Okay, you've got a couple $100 a month, go hire another kid, go hire another teenager to go mow the lawn for you. They'll do a second lawn while you do one lawn, bringing in more business. Once you grow it to a sustainable point, right? And as you're younger, you need to go for that cash flow. And it's something that I struggled with when I was educating, talking with younger men. Is it's like I'm thinking you got to go IBC, you got to go these crazy returns, but they're like, man, I only make a couple $100, which makes sense. And I think initially you have to go ahead and have your money make more money in not in the passive income way, but in the traditional active income way. Then when you get to a point where your cash flow is high enough, then you can start visiting. Okay, now I want to start getting into alternative investments for passive income. Once you cross that bridge, then you go down the IBC route, open up an IBC policy, and use it as an and asset to then go fund your passive income. On the flip side to that, on the opposite end of the age spectrum, if you're older and you have more money and you're actually dwindling down on your work, if you have cash, use that cash first and foremost, because your health on that side is not going to be as healthy as a younger 18, 19-year-old individual. So by that point, time is against you from a health standpoint. So the sooner you can get that cash out and open up a policy, the sooner you can make moves. If you wait and start looking at ways to invest, by the time that goes on, your health score could potentially go down and you'd be at risk of not qualifying for a policy at all, or maybe as good of a policy. So you want to get that money moved into a policy and then invest from there. And that's where the health and wealth components go in simultaneously. Right? We want to take care of ourselves at all ends of the spectrum in terms of a health standpoint, but from a wealth standpoint, the balance is a little bit shifted. Younger, we want to make our money, make more money, and then go into a policy and then go into passive income, similar to the cash flow quadrant. Whereas when we're older, we want to make sure that money is protected and we can safeguard it. And that's where IBC can come in at a good point.
And actually, for the younger listeners, like I kind of envy, this new generation because there's just so many more options, right? You talk about the gig economy, right? Even like service like Turo. Like if you're creative, there's so many different things you can do, right? If you have a car, you can become an Uber driver, right? Like you can make a decent like side hustle going, right? We know young people who want to get into the real estate game, but they don't have money, they don't have good credit. What do? They become wholesaler, right? You become the bird dog, find the deals, and then you flip it to investors who have money, and you just make like with no credit of your own, no cash, you can make a kind of a commission in between each deal, right? There are just so many options. You just have to be willing to learn, and there are so many available. I wouldn't, there's stuff that obviously you could pay for, right? Communities you can join and you pay a fee for that, but even just the free resources available, just it's out there. You just have to look for it.
I liken it to here's the example I like to use because we can tie in the health and wealth component together. When you're younger, and then when I say young, I mean this could be I'm saying 18, but some 18-year-olds might not be thinking this mindset, right? We're talking most people still are conditioned to go to college. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm not opposed to college. I just think that college is right for certain people. If you're meant to go down a path of becoming a doctor, a lawyer, a profession that requires you to have continuing education, by all means, college is probably the right bet. But if you're unsure, there's nothing wrong with going to a trade school. There's nothing wrong with learning the trades. If anything, people in the trades are actually making more money and finding it easier to find a job because those working with your hands has become very, very unpopular, if you will. It's all about knowledge work. So I think that it's important if you're unsure of what to do, you can explore the trades. But what I was getting is, let's say you're 22 getting out of college or you're 18 getting out of high school. When it comes to, like I mentioned, the financial world, you're going to want to build up your cash. You're going to want to build up your money first and foremost. It's the same concept with health. When you're younger, because you have a lot of testosterone as a man, even as a woman, still having lots of testosterone, you're going to want to take advantage of that and build up your muscle mass. You're going to want to lift, you're going to want to lift heavy because the likelihood of getting injured is lower, of course, if your technique is correct. You want to build up that muscle because by the time you hit 30, 35, you're naturally going to have a decline in muscle mass. No matter how hard you train, assuming you're not taking any exogenous steroids or any drugs, you're naturally going to go down. So if you can start your point a little bit higher, your point of return, even though you're going down, it's going to go down at a slower rate than if you didn't have any muscle mass, right? So if you have, and this goes back to money, if you have $1 million saved up at 30 years old, right, and you stop investing or you just let it sit there, well, then that money is going to slowly dwindle down. Versus if you only had $500,000, your rate that the amount of money you're going to get back is going to be lower. Same thing with muscle mass. If you have 150 pounds of lean skeletal muscle mass, then you start dropping. Let's say you drop by 5% a year. Well, you're going to be dropping down. But if you're starting at only 75 pounds of muscle mass, your rate is going to be a lot steeper. So I think those are so important that it's a lot of times the younger people that I talk to, just and myself included, are thinking, okay, well, I want to balance it out. I want to have all this passive income coming in where it's like you don't even have active income coming in first. You need active income to make passive income because if you don't have any money, you can't have your money make money. It's the same concept with being physically fit. You can't preserve something that you don't have. Um, I'll never forget this. As a when I started training, I remember as a soccer player, I was just very, very lean. I wasn't very muscular. I was very lean. And I would always be like, "Oh, look at my abs." Like I had abs because I was so lean and I was so small. Like I weighed like a buck 20 walking around. And so yeah, I was very small. And I remember talking to like serious lifters who were competing at the time when I was getting into this world. And I thought, well, look at me. I have abs. What do you mean? Like I'm leaner than you are. And they're like, yeah, but you have no muscle on you. Right. So that's not going to sustain. You can go in, if you go into your adult life with very, very minimal amount of muscle, your risk of getting injured and your risk of sarcopenia, which is the loss of muscle mass, is a lot higher. So in your youth, focus on building up both your muscle and your wealth. And as you're getting on the older end, you don't need to be as aggressive with pushing your body to go heavy squats, heavy deadlifts, heavy benching, because at that point you want to preserve what you have. And there's different training modalities to preserve as opposed to building. And it's the same thing with wealth. You're not going to try to push a lot of high risk, high return investments because you don't have time on your side to recover. So you want to get more into a preservation mindset.
Wow, that's really cool. I like how you broke it down. And so on that weightlifting question, this is not for me. Obviously, I've passed that already. I think I weighed a buck 20 like in fifth grade, maybe fourth grade. I was like, oh gosh, I don't remember seeing those numbers. But like someone like my daughter, right? She's 16.
Yeah.
Is it too early to be lifting? And is it or too early to be lifting heavy at her
Yeah.
age?
No, there's actually research that has shown the effects of compound movements and how beneficial it could be, especially for women at a young age. Because with women, the bones are more brittle, right? And the more you can put muscle mass on those, going back to my previous example, the sooner you can put muscle on there, the sooner you're protecting the bones. And as women get older, especially going into like the menopause age, naturally the body starts breaking down bone a little bit more and more. It's called decalcification, where it's removing calcium from the bones. So we want to be very careful about that. The sooner we can build up that muscle, the better. And as long as form and technique are correct, there's no issues with going heavy. The problem with going heavy, and I speak from experience here as a 16-year old guy or teenager, I remember being in the gym and just like, well, I'm going to ego lift and just trying to push up weights that I actually could not even lift. But I was just so about my ego. So when it comes to heavy lifting is very beneficial. I would say no fewer than 6 reps. So staying in that like 6 to 30 rep range to help build muscle is also going to build strength. But if you're under 18, there's really no need to go like a 1 rep max to go extremely heavy. So just being able to I'm very, very big on people, teenagers starting to lift weights, but lift weights supervised. I go back to earlier what I said, having a coach in the financial world. It's the same concept for the younger generation. Having a coach, just a personal trainer, somebody who can a parent who can watch your form and watch your technique and teach you how to properly do it, I think can lead to a lot of benefits. So to answer your question, it's not too early to start. I think one point that I wanted to make as I was thinking, you talked about Monopoly, the cash flow game, the effect, the best way for parents to implement strategies with their children is in a organic way. And I'll give you an example. I remember as a kid, my parents specifically would be, you need to lift, you need to work out, you need to run because you need to physically, look good. You want to, they instilled it from a, not a shallow perspective, but it was an aesthetic driven purpose. Right. Whereas in my opinion, the same thing with the money. If it was, okay, you need to make money because you can't be poor. It wasn't the why behind it. The parents I've seen personally, parents who raise their kids, both in the financial world where where they teach them, hey, here's what we're going to go spend and here's why we can't buy you this toy, or we'll let you make the decision. You can see the whole financial picture. Understand that if you buy this toy, that means that in 6 months you can't have another toy, or you could use your Christmas gift now, but that's it, you're not getting another gift for 18 months. It's teaching them in the strategy as opposed to just telling them what to do. And it's the same thing with food. When you see parents who are already labeling good and bad foods at such a young age, kids will start to program that. Okay, broccoli, good, burger, bad, but they don't understand why, right? When you can teach them and say, okay, the kid says, I want a burger. Okay, you're going to tell them, let's talk about what is in a burger. What do you like about a burger? Or how can we as a family make a healthier burger? Right? Okay, we're not going to go to McDonald's to go get a burger. We're going to go to the grocery store. We're going to grill up some patties. We're going to buy a whole wheat bun. We'll buy some grass-fed, leaner ground beef, and we'll make a burger taste good. And so if you teach them at a young age, hey, here's what healthy food tastes like, well, that's all they really know. And they're part of it. They're cooking. The next thing you know, they start craving that for the right reasons. It's making sure you're implementing it for the right reasons as opposed to the wrong reasons, which I would say would be from a aesthetic point of view, just strictly doing it because you want to look a certain way, or from a financial point of view, just doing it because you think more money equals more success, right? And as we've discussed in the show, that's not always the case.
Right. or making like unrealistic sacrifices, right? And that kind of backfires, right?
Yeah.
Financially or even diet wise, right? If you deprive
Yep.
yourself
Yep.
of, you know, a treat here and there, and then you end up binge eating at 3 a.m.
Exactly.
on top of ice cream,
Yep.
right? Or going on a trip that you obviously shouldn't be going on, right? Just
Yep.
because you just feel so deprived. You
You're
kind of
overwhelmed.
like, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll share an example that I started competing bodybuilding wise at a pretty young age. I was 17 when I did my first show. And I remember vividly the like couple of weeks leading up to the show. I had been, of course, dieting. And of course, as a 17-year-old, you're in growth phase. It's not natural to be dieting your body to get so lean. It's just retrospectively, I can know that now. But you don't want to get that lean. You don't really want to diet. And I remember it was like 2 weeks before my show. I was really hungry. I remember getting up in the middle of the night and going to the pantry. And of course, I lived with health nuts. So there was no chocolate bars. There was no unhealthy food. But I was so hungry. But I remembered, oh, I can't, my diet is telling me to follow this and this. I can't have anything else. But I was hungry. I remember grabbing raw oats and just eating raw oats because that's all I could find. Like it was so dry, I couldn't even swallow it. It was so dry. And at the time, I thought, okay, I just need to be disciplined. And then that same show, the night before my show, like I couldn't sleep because I was very dizzy. Turns out I had low blood sugar, but I was not feeling good. And my mom was telling me, you need to drink Gatorade. You need to drink Gatorade. I said, no, Gatorade has sugar and sugar is going to do X, Y, and Z. Looking back, those were the early signs of disordered eating. That's not a healthy association with food. Right. And so, but I remember going to the show and my friends and family and people, wow, like, how did you get so lean? How did you get so muscular at such a young age? Like there was this admiration, there was this validation of, oh wow, I sacrificed and therefore I got success. And what happened? It translated the same thing into the finance world. Okay, well, I sacrifice, I make money externally, I get validation. But it's internally, if I'm just doing it for the external validation, I myself never feel like I'm satisfied. And you mentioned that can easily cause you to go binge eat or go on a binge shopping spree. And what happens after that? What's the number one thing that happens after you binge in any form? Guilt, right? You guilt. So what do? You then get harder on yourself and you do it again. You're like, okay, this time I'm going to be even more disciplined. And the next thing you know, you're just digging yourself into this discipline hole, this discipline trap, and you've created an unhealthy relationship with the things you actually enjoy, whether it's food, whether it's going on a vacation. You deprive yourself of them for so long, and then you get to the quote unquote top and you realize, wait, hold on, what have I given up to get here? I mentioned this in one of our last episodes, and I learned this from the Modern Wisdom podcast, is the fallacy of giving up the thing that I want for the thing that I think is going to then eventually bring me happiness. If I'm giving up my free time and I'm sacrificing that to get it to open up my own business, work through all this business to make all this money, and then when I make that money, I'm then going to get free time. Well, why did I just sacrifice all
Right.
of the free time just on that level? Like that
'Cause you
blows my mind.
mentioned that your story with
Yeah.
the was it the Mexican fisherman story, was
Yeah,
it?
it wasn't my story.
Right.
I didn't physically go to Mexico to see this fisherman, but yes, I heard
But it was like
the correct, a
a
fable, yeah.
tale to kinda, yeah. And then you also describe, how you observe your father-in-law, who is so content and happy with, what he has. And it's not like he needs to make the sacrifices, right? Because he already has what he wants, right? If you push him to, "Hey, go pick up a side job, don't you want" he's like, "Why?" "Oh, so that I can just come back and do what I want to do." You know? It's like
And that's where we talk about the differences in age, right? There's not I know plenty of people who are in their 60s who have chosen not to retire because they love their job so much and they're not doing it for the money, right? And although you think that as a young individual, you think, okay, well, the whole point of me working is to get to a point where I can retire and stop working. Well, in reality, that shouldn't be the case. And I know plenty of younger people who are on the journey of wanting to make more money and just start creating these unhealthy pathways, knowing that even though they know, or maybe they don't know how much time they have on their side, they're so obsessed over it, and they get to a point where they just get into this lifestyle of they don't enjoy anything they're doing because they think that they're sacrificing for this greater good. So it doesn't matter truly what age you're at in terms of making money or getting healthy. If you have a pretty clear or relatively clear idea of what the outcome in health or the outcome in finance is going to do to enhance your life.
That vision, you have to have that clarity of vision, which, it took me years to understand and to grasp and actually apply. Like I've read tons of books about like vision boards and all that kind of stuff, but it's one thing to kind of just go through the motion of doing that. And it's another to really be introspective and really think about like, okay, well, I want to have time freedom. Why? So you can do what? And who are you going to do this with? And how that make you feel? A lot of questions that, you know, in the pursuit of it, right? The pursuit of success that we talked about with Chris Bay, right? Is it a thing that you're after? Most likely, if you really dig deep, it's never a thing, right? It's never that car or it's never that house. It's it's the relationship that comes with it, right? Is it right? Like it's a validation, it's a feeling. It's kind of a lot to wrap your head around, like when you're trying to do that whole vision. And I think the more emotional you feel when you're doing it, the more real it becomes, and the more like it can work. Like I'm a total believer that like having like a vision of your like whatever your goal is, not just writing it down and stuff, but like having an actual like vivid, almost like when you're dreaming. You know how like you're in that dreaming state and you feel like you're actually living that life, like it's so real, and then you wake up, you're like, oh, that was just a dream. Like you have to get to that state. I don't know how to like maybe meditation could help or something like that. It's a real like yeah, it's taken me years to kind of understand it.
So what do you I think that's really important because it's one thing to be able to say, go create a vision, go create a goal. And then you accept that and then you go sit down and you say, okay, I'm going to create my vision today. What the heck am I doing? Right? So what are some key points or some things that you recommend that have worked for you? And then I'll share some things that have worked for me. What are some things that you recommend for people to help identify their vision? And this could be big picture, like in terms of their whole life. It could be their vision for their career. It could be the vision for their relationship. There's many, you can have multiple visions of what you want. So what are some takeaways that you have?
I think having, for me anyways, having like something tangible that when I'm creating like a vision board helps, right? And it's kind of cliche, like, oh, go to a not that we have magazines anymore. Back in the days, back in my day when we still have physical magazines, right? You actually would, take a magazine and cut up that house or dream house that you want, or, you know, cut up that vacation picture. Like, is it a picture of the ocean, or like what is actually the thing that you can actually physically touch and feel? It really helps. I think everybody, not everybody, most people start their vision board with things, right? That's kind of the basic level. We need to take care of our basic needs, right? So if you think about like the couple areas that you want to have vision, create a goal for, right? Health, wealth, those are easy. And then you have your relationship. It's harder to find pictures that would represent the
Brad Pitt and
relationship.
Angelina Jolie. Just put them on your wall.
Right? And then it gets harder and harder. Like what is your even your spiritual, right? Like that area of growth that or goal that you want to have. How do you even get pictures of it? And then it gets more and more abstract. I think the more abstract it gets, the more real it could get. It's kind of a reverse of process. Right? You start with the concrete physical thing, right? The car, the house, or whatever, and then it gets really abstract. And then when you are translating these things into more of the abstract, that's when it actually becomes more real. It's a reverse process for me.
Interesting. Yeah. I It's funny because I heard this thing that said, what would tomorrow you want you today to do?" Right? And that's a tough question for me to answer because I don't know. Because at the same time, the question I ask, and this is the vision component to it. I think before starting any vision board, before starting anything, ask yourself one question. What does your perfect day look like? What does your perfect day look like? From the moment you open your eyes to the moment you lay your head on the pillow to go to sleep, what does a perfect day look like? And you will find out a lot about yourself when you do that. And of course, that's not to say that every day is going to be your perfect day. You can't, if a perfect day to you is going to the Bahamas and spending literally all day from the moment you wake up, the moment you go to bed on the beach reading a book, right? It might not be realistic, but at least it gives you an idea of something to aim for, of what your ideal day would look like. And so the reason why I think it's so powerful is because you find out multiple things. One, what are you doing? Okay. Are you working out? Are you eating? What are you doing physically throughout that day? Who are you with? Because it's your perfect day. Who are you spending it with? Are you spending it with your significant other? Are you spending it with your parents, your friends, whoever? Identify what you're doing, who you're doing it with, and be realistic in the sense that ask yourself, is that actually making me happy? Or is that not? I'll give you an example. You mentioned the car, you mentioned the house, you mentioned whatever your thing is that maybe you want to get at. If that thing isn't in your dream day, rethink that. And I'll keep, and so for me, it's, I would think big picture, like I would be think very, very broad. Okay, what does my day look like? Oh, I want to be at the beach, or I want to be with my wife. I want to be here. It was very vague. I want to go to the gym. The more specific you can make it, the better it can be. So I now when I write about my dream day, I say, okay, I'm with my wife. We're driving in my car, whether that's my dream car. We're driving in that car. We're going to this specific gym that has a sauna, it has a cold plunge, it has a pickleball court, it has everything I want. We're driving to that gym. We're working out. We're working out this specific muscle group because I love training this muscle group. After that, we're going to go get a lunch at this Asian restaurant that we just love, this Asian restaurant. We're going to hang out. We're going to talk. We're going to come home. We're going to come home and then we're going to go take a little trip and I want to go golf. Okay. We're going to go, I'm going to go golf by myself. And during that golfing, when I'm by myself, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about, oh, the weather's great, or oh, I like my shirt that I'm wearing. Man, I did really bad on the golf course today, but I'm having fun. I come home from golf and so on. You see where my path is going is the more specific you can go, right? I come home to my dream home. The more specific you can go, the sooner you can start implementing those things. Because if golf is your thing, you don't need to make millions of dollars to go golf. There are ways that you can start implementing those things now in your life as a reward for what you're doing. And you know what happens? And this is what happened with me. You start realizing, yeah, now that I have the option to do that, that's not really what I want to do. I want to do something else. But you have this vision in your mind of what you think the ideal picture is. And then you start touching some of it, start living it, and you realize, actually, that's not that material thing didn't make me happy. That physical thing didn't make me happy. And you start having experiences where you meditate or you go on a walk with your dog and you realize this is very peaceful. I actually really enjoy this. And that's where you can start adjusting and morphing your day.
So in your relationship, right, are you more of the one that has ideas, like, constantly? Because,
About what? Like just in
like,
general?
yeah, I mean, like these type of, you do more of these exercises or mental
Oh, for sure.
exercise.
Well, yeah, but I think that's because yes, because I'm asking myself those questions and I'm on this journey with you, with everybody else, where I'm trying to identify that. I think there's people out there who don't even think about it and just know. Like they know. And my wife is one of those people. It's like I know what I want to do. If I have time, if an hour opens up, one of my appointments that cancels or whatever, I have an hour opened up, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to because I have this list of leisure activities that I can pick from that I enjoy doing. Right. So that to answer that question, then the answer is yes, that is me because I don't have that. I'm trying to build that running list of what I enjoy. And I think the sooner people can have that running list of leisure activities, and this could be going for a ride in your sports car, this could be meditating in your fancy home, it could be going on a walk. the sooner people have those leisure activities that they can pull from, the sooner they can implement them.
Yeah, I asked that question because I feel like, my in my relationship with Mike, he's I always ask him like, "So what do you wanna do?" He's like, honestly, I don't wanna do anything,
Yeah.
but you wanna do this, so,
Yeah.
you I'm happy to do what you wanted to do, right?
Right.
So, it's just funny because I'm the ideas person, right? And it's
Sure, sure.
sometimes hard to be in my company because I'm like my brain is just going like constantly with new ideas and I throw it out there. It doesn't necessarily mean that every idea is good. It's part of it is because I'm still on the chase. I'm still on the hunt. Yeah, I'm not done yet, right? But certain people, they don't need to be like everybody's different, right? Everybody's on different
Right.
journeys. Some people they're okay taking a leisurely walk. You know what
Yep.
I mean? So yeah, but whatever wherever place people are, it's okay. That's the journey that you're on, and everybody's at a different pace. We just happen to be similar in
Well, and
in
not
that sense.
only that, tying it all back, it brings it back to the age factor. No matter what age you're at, you can always have aspirations. I would actually encourage you to have aspirations, right? You can say, okay, my goal, and again, the goals will be different. I know this 18-year-old me wanted the fancy cars, fancy houses, the luxurious lifestyle, the traveling wherever I want to go to. Whereas me at the age now where I'm kind of living that, it's now I'm thinking, okay, well, what other things can I value that's not physical, right? And as maybe people when they get older, they realize, okay, I want to slow down a little bit. I want to just take a trip and really just be there on that trip and be more present. Or I do want to have a really nice car that I've always told myself that I deserve. The sooner you can visualize that and put that into practice and then work again, we talk a lot about reverse engineering, starting from the end and then going backwards makes it a lot easier. Okay, you realize that one of the things you really want is a car. All right. Well, how much is that car? How much is your dream car? Okay. How much do I need to be making per month to afford that dream car or to pay it cash? That gives you an aspiration to look forward to. And once I'm firmly of the belief that the chase is easier than arriving at the destination because when you're chasing and when you're after something, you are just laser focused on getting that thing. But then when you get that thing, and it could be physical or it could be time, it could be whatever you want, then you have to then look back inside and say, holy crap, what do I want now? Because you're always going to be ever moving the goalpost. So just keep that in mind. But no matter what age you're at, you can set these goals. And based on that, knowing kind of both from a health and wealth perspective that different points of our lives require different focuses. When we're younger, we need to focus on building our financial capital, building money that we can then use to go for passive income. We can build and should be focusing on building muscle, building our cardiovascular fitness to endure us for a long and healthy quality of life, focusing on health span as opposed to lifespan, which is quality of health, quality of life as opposed to just the numbers that you live. And then on the end, on the flip side of that, you want to see that, okay, I want to preserve what I have, whether it's preserving my capital to sustain me for the rest of my life, preserving my capital to make more money so that I don't have to be aggressive and potentially put myself at risk. And the same thing when it comes to training. Okay, yes, I've met and I've heard of multiple stories of people who don't start weight training until they're 60 or don't run their first marathon until they're 65 and then they run marathons all the way until when they pass away. To me that's just inspirational. It just shows you that no matter what age you are, it's never too late to start. But anybody, you can ask anybody, even the person who ran their first marathon at 60, they would always tell you, I wish I would have ran it at 50, or I wish I would have ran it at 40. So I think the right time to start anything or any journey is now. The sooner the better. And once you get over the question of, is this, am I too young or am I too old? And you figure out, no, I'm not too young and I'm not too old. Then you start asking, okay, well, when should I start this process? And you start realizing, well, the time is now because time is, you only have today and you only have the time that's currently there. Tomorrow you're one day closer, right? You're one day further away or one day closer to getting to where you wanted to get to. So I think the sooner you can start, the better. And there's so many exciting opportunities that are out there, and we only have one life to live, right? And we want this to be these tools, both the health and wealth, to bring us to that fulfilled life.
That's a great summary. And I think that's actually a great topic for our next episode. We can talk about where to start because that's going to be my next question, right? If I'm ready I want to start. What? What do we do? So
Yeah.
tune in.
Oh, what a teaser. What a teaser, man. Well, everybody, thanks again for tuning in. We've talked about now just some unique concepts. We're getting really deep into the flow of this show. We've had a couple of amazing guests on already, and we hope you're finding value from this. We really do. We're trying to pitch things on a different way. We're not just saying, here, go invest in this ETF or go invest in this thing, because we want you to be able to see the bigger picture of how it all fits into your overall life. So I hope that you can take some messages away and help to live a more fulfilled life. But hey, thanks again for joining. I look forward to talking to you on the next one.
A pleasure. Always.